them to use satire and that sort of thing to like avoid heteronormativity a little bit, and it gives them a certain freedom that they might not have had if it were a serious dramatic show all the time. I mean, obviously we have very serious dramatic episodes, but I like that you can be more subversive with camp, and then it's still funny and it's fun to watch.
I was just gonna say, I think it's interesting too that like the fact that the network didn't want to allow them to be just like open about the two main characters being lesbians meant that they had to like embed the queerness like deeper into the show. Because if you look at like the tone early on in like season 1, it's actually not that campy. Like, especially like the series premiere, like they're clearly trying to go for like a darker kind of grittier tone by exploring, like, especially if any of you guys watch Hercules, which like, don't waste your time, but Xena's the best thing to come out of that show. But I have watched it just to see the Xena episodes of like her character origin, and you can see a lot of it is like the same people that were working on those two shows, and like Xena was set up, especially originally, to be in a direct contrast as far as like the overall tone of her character. She was very much like an anti-hero because Hercules was so boringly like blandly good in like this just completely meaningless way. Like I just don't buy him as a hero at all.
Yeah, I don't find Hercules as campy either, which is weird. I think it's campy, but it's almost like, it seems like it's campy by accident, whereas Xena is campy by design.
Can we just take a second here to acknowledge the sound effects team?
Yes.
Who has to be working like 24 hours a day on that show? Like every time Joxer gets whacked in the head, you hear Tweety birds and...
Well, there were camp episodes of Hercules, but the
All right.
overall tone was not.
Yeah, all right. Just for the folks that didn't hear that, there are some camp episodes of Hercules, but the overall tone is not. And I think that's a fair summary of that. I haven't seen as much Hercules as I have seen it, though. I will admit that's a blind spot for me.
Also with the camp, there's just like so much queer coding that like would be really easy to go over the heads of straight read the network producers' heads. And so like they don't catch it at all because they don't know how to see it. But like it's absolutely there.
Yeah, like I remember I started watching Xena again while I was in college, and I was talking to my mom about it because I used to watch it with her, and I was talking about how I thought that Xena and Gabrielle were a lesbian couple. And she goes, "What? No, they're not." And so then I sat down with her and I explained to her all the different ways that I thought that they were a couple. And then she was like, "Oh wow, I guess you're right. I can't believe that went over my head." So that will kind of lead us into our next audience thing. I want to know people's like favorite, almost couple-defining moments for Xena and Gabrielle. So hit us with those if you got them.
Ides of March.
Ides of March.
A day in the life.
A
A day in life, yeah. Oh my god, can we just talk for a minute about all of the bathing scenes? No, I'm just so concerned with getting my friend's shoulder clean.
It's very important.
I can't reach back there.
She's got such big muscles, I mean.
The Bacchae episode.
Which episode?
The Bacchae.
Oh, the
Oh my god, the lesbian vampires!
I will admit I had not seen that episode until recently, and I'm watching it, you know, as now and going, what the hell? You know, right? It's just very odd. It's not in the tone of the show, if you know which one. It's just, I think they were trying to get the Anne Rice demo. I don't know.
I don't know how familiar with like horror genre stuff you guys are, but one of the actual like original the lesbian vampire is like a huge trope, and also one of like the original vampire stories, Carmilla, which is actually before Dracula. I mean, she was a cute young woman targeting other cute young women, and like so it's sort of like deeply embedded in the queerness of the show, and that's part of like the reason the tone of that episode was so weird. It's just because they were trying to do this totally different thing, but it also ties into like all of their queer like themes.
The episode where Gabrielle literally died and Xena invented CPR on the spot.
Okay.
Don't you leave me.
I gotta pause because that episode I was watching it, and right, she does a tracheostomy. She delivers a centaur baby by a cesarean section. She invents CPR, and she splits somebody's leg and like stops a civil war.
Yeah, and don't forget, she taught it all to Hippocrates. Like, talk about
She has many
resources.
skills. And a dude took credit for it.
So rude.
Also, I mean, just the pinch alone, she even knows what nerves are in ancient Greece. Or like how lungs work. I mean, keep in mind, this is back when people thought like the 4 bodily humors controlled your health. Like they just bloodletting was always the answer.
Many skills. All right, any more couple moments for us?
Motherhood.
Motherhood.
Oh my God, Gabrielle is the father of her baby. She's so the father of her baby. She even says it. Like when Aries shows up and he's like, if I'd known you were looking, and she's like, Gabrielle already got the job. She literally says that.
By the way, if you yell out an answer, I can't like see where people are yelling. So just come up at the end and get a Xena pin if you wish or something.
They're really cool.
They are really cool. They're all really awesome, ridiculous facial expressions of Xena.
And didn't you want a slide about all the people that fall in love with Gabrielle?
I bet I did.
I think that, I mean, there's at least 2
Remember when
major
there was a
lesbian love
slideshow?
triangles.
Remember when we had a slideshow and I was using it? Well, here are a couple of like the love triangles that, so we were just talking about that. It's very interesting to me that there are multiple lesbian love triangles in Xena. And they're I think very clear and very explicit. Like somebody already talked about Najara a little bit.
She literally says, if I can't have her, no one else can. I mean, you don't really say that about your gal pal. And I mean, also, you don't turn yourself into fire to like protect your true love and only her soulmate can pass just because you really like somebody.
What about the episode where they're switched bodies and they're literally married?
Oh yeah.
Right? In the future?
And then Aries is like, no. And then they go off and stay married as women.
Oh yeah. That was
wasn't
Yeah.
even subtext.
Like body switching just takes away any subtext, because as long as you put a man in one of their bodies, then you can just walk away and say, no homo, we didn't mean it.
I mean, that's
Soulmates, but it's not a big deal.
Doesn't that happen at like the end of the very first season too, where it's like Xena dies and then she like possesses Autolycus, and through Autolycus, keep in mind, there's like a dude in there, she's totally kissing and also grabbing Gabby's ass. Keep in mind, like Autolycus wasn't there until the end when she's like, get your hands off my butt. Like Xena put those hands on the butt.
And that's not even in a future timeline, so you can't excuse that away. Just saying. All right. Well. Let's see, what did I have next in here? Okay, next we'll talk about this fabulous fandom of which we are all a part. And Tanya has a lot of really cool things to talk about here.
I will try. I'll try to be cool.
Okay.
So who identifies as a Xenite? Please show of hands. All right, who's been to a Xena convention, Xena specific?
Oh
All
my
right,
God, of course
thank you.
this is a shocker.
So you can please correct me with some of this in the back. Awesome. She has pins, so come up and give them. When you
If you've been to a XenaCon, you deserve a pin.
Absolutely. So what I do in my non-teaching and non-being mom life and non-making this costume for 5 million hours is as I study.
Awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
Ooh, yeah.
Thank you. So what I do is I study fans who do charity work. Okay, so the question is, why are we seeing a lot of charity coming out of fandom? And so it's been a part of fandom for ever, right? And so there have been some great panels this weekend about especially women in fandom and sci-fi fantasy fandoms getting very actively engaged in doing charity work. So part of what I'm looking at is what happens in social context that's creating that sort of movement. And I actually think it is a social movement. I won't go into all of this because we're supposed to talk about Xena. One thing that Liza asked me to kind of think about, and I thought this question was great, is what is it with these shows? What's going on in the themes of these shows that creates this passion in people, right? And so what I think it is, after interviewing some folks, is the idea of family. The idea of family. And in sociology, we have this concept of created kinship. So how many people think that fandom is like a family, or you have friends in fandom, that you feel like I would get on a bus and drive across country? All right, that's at least 50% who wanted to raise their hand. So I'm going to ask it again. Who considers fandom their family? Not social pressure, thank you. No. Why do we have that feeling? So I think what's going on is in these shows like Xena, like Supernatural, like Firefly, like Star Trek, like Winona Earp, you've got this reconstruction of what family means that goes beyond blood, right? It goes beyond blood to have this created or fictive kinship. Sociologists have looked at this, and this is where we get back to the queer question too in Xena, as being incredibly important for queer people. and people who have been kicked out of their blood families, right, or their legal families because of their sexual orientation or their marginalized identity. So they come, and when you see this represented in these shows, right, and then you get together in spaces like this and you feel this emotional energy, that creates that family feeling, and then you want to put it somewhere. And the place that it goes is into helping other people. So that's kind of the idea, and that's what I'm trying to explore. So just a couple of stats about what Xenites have done over the years. So I'm trying to get specific with this, and as a person who's a scientist, it bothers me that I don't have this exact number. But since the beginning of the show, how much do you think Xenites have donated to charity?
3 million.
3 million?
8 million.
8 million?
20.
I don't know. No. Short answer. Somewhere, I'm going to say somewhere between, I've heard as much as 13 to 15 million. I have not been able to verify that because that seems like a lot of money to me, but even if it's not, even if it's $1 to $3 million, it's still pretty impressive, right? And that's not going away. So even in the last 10 years, they've raised over $170,000 for the Starship Foundation, which is a children's hospital in New Zealand that Lucy Lawless is on the board of trustees for. So primarily benefiting Starship Foundation, charities for women, children, and people with AIDS. And I found this out, and I thought this would be really interesting to you. When they first had the first Xena convention in New York City, they raised money for charity in 1997, and they raised $4,500 in a weekend, 20 years ago. First convention, $4,500 in a weekend. And they tried to donate it to a charity, and the charity said, quote, "We don't want to take money from those Amazons."
I think that's code for lesbians.
I don't know the charity, but I found that fascinating. They needed money, they wouldn't take it, and this is part of the stigma around Geek, and yes, I think your point too, Paige. So I found that really interesting. So Sword and Staff, have people heard of Sword and Staff? Was created as kind of an umbrella. It's not a charity itself, but it's who you can donate money to, and then they allocate. So they kind of handle money, and part of their creation of that was to sort of have a step between the fandom and the charity, which I thought was interesting, and that's something I just learned. So lots of what they auction off is fanfic, fan art, which I think is wonderful, right? And all the proceeds go to charity. And they are still doing, so has anybody been to Xenite Retreat? Yay! Maybe we're not there yet, so should I?
Oh, go for it.
Okay, so Xenite Retreat, I actually talked to one of the folks who organizes that, and what that is meant to kind of step in because Creation stopped doing Xenacons, which is a bummer, right? How many of you would go to a Xenacon if Creation? Yeah, I know, right? They need to do that again. So Xenite Retreat is a weekend just for fans. It's basically Xena summer camp. Look it up, it looks amazing. I've not been, I'm gonna try to go this year. And there's one activity where you put on blue paint and howl at the moon. Yeah?
Yeah.
And when the ladies told me like that's a thing they do, I was like, I am there. Tell me when.
Do
Here's
they
my
make
money.
you watch scenes from like a failed series, series premiere?
No, it's like a dance party.
I was making
Okay.
a joke. Because I don't know if you guys remember that episode, the weird time travel one.
Carl Urban was a caveman.
Yeah, it's actually a bunch of scenes that are like cut up from a failed like pilot. It's called
Amazon High.
You know, yeah.
Wow, that's cool. No, I don't think so. You can choose to do that if you want to. So anyway, they still incorporate the charity aspect. That's what I was going to say. Every Sunday they still do a charity brunch and they auction things off, and they occasionally have folks from the show that come and also participate with them. So I just think that's great. I just want you to know kind of the charity movement is still going. Obviously Ms. Lawless and her activism is amazing, right? And I can talk about that for 4 hours, but I won't pass it on.
All right, and now we'll just have Sarah hit us with a State of the Xenoverse update here.
Yeah, do you have those notes printed? I'm gonna miss stuff if I don't use the notes. So we just covered Xenite Retreat, which is in April. It's just north of LA. And so what you do is you fly down to the Burbank Airport, you take a bus called the Argo Express, and you sing songs all the way to Xena Camp. And they have scholarships. Seriously, look it up, it's great. And they're thinking about doing it in New Zealand too. Let's see, where else do we have? Ways you can still be involved. The show, unfortunately, is not on Netflix anymore, it's only on Hulu. The only website that's really up and functioning these days is, I don't know how you pronounce it, Oxip. Yeah, it's a series of Australian websites devoted to every aspect of Xena. All the old websites are still out there, and they look exactly like how they would have looked if you were looking at them on Netscape in 1997. It's awesome. It's retro. It really is. You look it up and I'm like, what year is it? Did I time travel? There's all kinds of books, and there's comics, and there are coloring books, and I'm sure I'm forgetting something in here.
I will mention quick, if you don't mind, Sarah, that I did speak to someone who runs a Xena rewatch. So every Saturday, they cycle through the entire show, and they watch 2 episodes a week. It starts at about, I want to say it's 4 o'clock Eastern time. And they watch 2 episodes, and it's a Twitter, and then they tweet about it. And you can kind of co-watch with them and tweet. Hopefully that was, I didn't steal your thunder.
Oh, no, not at all. That's fantastic. I didn't know about that one.
Yeah, so there's like xenawatch.org, something like that.
And let's
If you shoot me an email, I'll get you the right details.
You should put it on our Facebook group, which we should talk about. So if you had fun at this panel and you want to talk to other Xenites, we started a Facebook group called Northwest Xenites, NW space Xenites. Just look it up on Facebook. We're going to moderate, so play nice to each other, but it's just a place where you can post goofy pictures and GIFs and fan theories and all kinds of fun stuff like that. Maybe organize little get-togethers in your area or something. Just something to keep in connection. You can also go see Gabby. She appears at cons pretty regularly. I think her next one is in Canada. She was just down in San Francisco recently. And Lucy Lawless is actually, and I think this is fabulous, she's appearing this fall in New Zealand in an immersive 80s musical called Pleasure Dome, where she plays a character named Sappho.
Can we take a break here for that one audience interactive thing that we talked about? Does anyone remember the poem?
Oh, yeah.
Like, we have prizes. We can give you a prize if you
Oh,
can
yeah.
recite the poem.
If anyone can recite the Sappho poem
It's
that
okay, don't-
Xena gives Gabrielle, like, if you can do it, we're going to be super impressed, and you get awesome fandom points, and we also have prizes. Can anyone do it? We're just curious.
Without the internet?
Yeah, without the internet. Because I can do it with the internet.
What?
I know. I have many skills.
Google is one of them. Oh, no takers.
What's the first line?
Sure, give us the first line.
That's what we're asking for.
Oh, it's in the
Is this
outline
like the
over
real
there.
Sappho poem?
Yes, it's actually a real Sappho poem, which
It's
I
the
think
one
is
where
cool.
she can't breathe.
Yeah, they
and
edit
everything
it
else.
and they butcher it a little bit for the episode, but if you actually look up the original poem, it's quite nice and it like flows a lot better than it does in the episode.
I think it's on page 2.
I know
You want
some,
me to
but
do
I
it?
can't.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I
That's
can't.
okay. That's okay. All right.
She's got some.
Oh,
I mean, my breath leaves my body, my fingers tremble, there's something about at the sight of you, and then all of these things that happen to her.
Yes, that is super close. So
Yeah.
I think that deserves a prize.
Wilma or Betty?
Yeah, just check out how close you were. So it's, there's a moment when I look at you and no speech is left in me. My tongue breaks, then fire races under my skin, and I tremble and grow pale, for I am dying of such love, or so it seems to be. So, super close. You get an A in Sappho 101.
I'll get you a prize at the end.
All right, and now is a perfect time to just segue into an audience Q&A. So feel free to step up to the mic and join the discussion with us.
yay, we've got some takers.
Yay.
Yeah,
And if you have some question, come up here and get a pen too.
yes, pins are good.
Okay, I had to write it on my phone or else I wouldn't remember. Okay, so do you think that in a modern reboot, if it were ever to happen, that they would make it quite as campy as the original? And do you think that the camp in that was intentional to distract from the deeper subtext that was going on?
That's a really good question because they were talking about a reboot recently, and what I heard was that they didn't want to make them openly gay, so it got canceled.
That's not what, never mind.
That's not
I know the whole story if you want me to tell
Yeah,
it.
we totally
Okay,
wanna
sorry,
hear
I don't mean to hijack your panel.
No,
Borrow a mic.
tell a story of the reboot.
Okay.
How important information to our here.
Hi, sorry,
Oh,
I'm awkwardly knocking everything over. I'm Ariel Wetzel from Xena Movie Campaign, so I'm like the nerd up here giving annoying comments to our experts. So Xena Movie Campaign was campaigning for a long time to bring the series back, and it was announced a few years ago it would be a reboot, which really wasn't what we wanted because we love Lucy Lawless and Renee O'Connor. But you know, we'll take more Xena. And the writer Javier Grillo-Marxuach was going to make them openly gay, and NBC was supportive of that. The original creator, Rob Tapert, was supportive of that, but Javier and Rob split due to creative differences that had nothing to do with the gayness. The gayness was going to be in the reboots, thankfully, so that was some good news. We speculate it might have just been about tone, so maybe they couldn't agree on if it was supposed to be campy or not, or if it was supposed to be Greek mythology or modern day. That, you know, it's just theories at this point.
Thank you. All right, that was super insightful.
Just to speak to the camp, you know, I don't know, I would hope so, because I feel like that was a really important part of the show, but I have a feeling they would try to make it more serious in tone.
I also feel like the science fiction fantasy genre in general has shifted since Xena was on air. I mean, like, if you're competing with things like Game of Thrones, like, you have to take yourself a bit more seriously, and I'm gonna be honest, like, my favorite episodes are the ones that tend to be a little bit more serious and, like, explore, like, when is violence really called for? Like, what does it mean to kill?
Yeah, I want it to be campy.
I'm very curious as to what your thoughts are to the Hercules and Xena animated movie that came out in the 90s.
Oh my god. So, my sister actually got me a DVD of that for my birthday, and I have not watched it yet because I'm organizing a watch party. So hopefully one of you has seen it. Like, it's in my possession.
I think this is the Star Wars Christmas special of our fandom.
Yes.
Having seen both, yes.
I need an invitation to that party.
All right.
Welcome. Join the Facebook group. We'll post about it.
Already did.
Nice.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I wanted to give the panel's opinion on one of the pieces of camp I found interesting, what I liked in the program, was Aphrodite.
Yes,
and
thank
she
you.
always spoke in what sounded like the classic California Valley Girl accent, and was dressed in modern lingerie, which I'm sure is completely out of the time period for ancient Greece type thing.
I actually have a lot to say about this because Aphrodite is my favorite. And I've thought about it a lot, including what I think Aphrodite would be in the reboot. That would be more or less a modern day equivalent to the Valley Girl. But to answer your question, Aphrodite in Greek mythology is often portrayed as speaking whatever dialect would have been hip or cool for young women of the day. And so I think that it's sort of a nod to the Greek mythology to have her talk like a Valley Girl and just be really hip like that. And so it works really well with the camp aesthetic, but then there's also an actual like mythological basis for it as well.
She's also supposed to be the epitome of like whatever the current beauty ideal is too, which kind of explains her like more modern costuming choices.
It struck me because Hugh Hefner just died, and rewatching an episode with Aphrodite, she looks like your stereotypical, you know, Playboy bunny.
Oh yeah.
Kind of. And I think she'd be an Instagrammer, personally, like Kardashian type person.
We're all friends with an Instagram models, and so
I actually am friends with an Instagram.
I am too. Yeah. And so it's like that one person you follow on Instagram that has like all these fabulous photos, and that's what they do, is they just are models on Instagram. So maybe that. But I hope that answers your question a little bit. Great. Okay. Go for it.
So I don't actually have a question, and I'm going to make a little plug here. There's a convention that happens in Las Vegas that is 100% dedicated to queer women and allies. It's about media and representation in media. We have fan panels kind of like this, but then we bring in writers, producers, directors, actresses that are LGBTQ or play LGBTQ. So if you guys want a flyer, I'll be in the back. And it's called Lexicon, but so just find me in the back of
Great.
flyers.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Lexicon, and you're gonna be Plexicon? Okay. And if you want a flyer, she's gonna be in the back.
That kind of ties into what I was going to ask, because some of these creators are going to be at Plexicon. You mentioned